In this video, we're going to talk about the types of templates you can get started with, and I picked 3 just to get started. One with some that are more simple in practice, not trying to look at the most complicated Power Automate flows to get started. And 2, they also hit at each of those examples of cloud flows that I was talking about. So the first one we're going to get started with is saving a attachment from an Office 365 email, getting that and storing that in OneDrive for Business. I switched over here to my Power Automate environment that I've been working in, and we're going to come over here to the templates on the left, and now we're going to search for those templates that I was talking about. So some of them show up right here at the top. For this one, just to make it easier, let's say save email and hit enter. And then there we go. We'll see save Office 365 email attachments to specified OneDrive for Business folder. Watch out, because Outlook.com and Office 365 email are 2 different things technically. So they're both Outlook, generally speaking, but Outlook.com is actually looking at a personal Microsoft account, whereas Office 365 email is looking at your organizational account. So you might see some weird differences if you end up actually accidentally using the Outlook.com. Make sure to select this one. And so when you get these template pop-ups, what they do is they present to you, one, what are the connections that we're going to need for this. So you can see here for OneDrive for Business and Office 365 Outlook, the distinction I was talking about. And when we run these flows, they have to run under some connection to these systems, right? And so you can see here that this is pointed at my storm at Kumo, my storm at Kumo. And when we look at the permissions here, this one doesn't say too much, but this one gives a little bit more. You can see where what we're going to use this connection for is potentially to read my user profile. It can read, update, and delete my emails. All of this is running under my identity, and it's only running based on the actions I tell it to do. So this is called delegated permissions because the flow is running through my account's access at the end of the day. So when I hit continue here, we're going to jump into the flow editor. And that's just something I want you to watch out for, because as we get into this, each action needs a connection to run under. And so whether that's your connection, maybe you have someone else come in and create their own connection, all of that is what distinguishes how these flows will run. But all right, now that I have the template up and running here, you can see that some of these actions are just pre-populated automatically, and they're adding a little bit of logic for us just to handle one, if we're getting attachments from a specific user, or if we're just getting attachments that need to be saved even from our own email. When we look at this trigger, so on new email, let's look at some of these configurations that they've done here. And so every trigger has different properties, configurations that we can apply to it based on whatever the trigger allows us. So in this case, we can look at, all right, anything that comes to my inbox folder. I could even filter this down to say if maybe the to isn't the best example, but let's say from, if from a specific person, I only want to save these attachments. That's one way you can think of this logic. We're also looking at how they configure this where only with attachments is set to yes. So in this case, we're only going to run this flow if an email with attachments is received. And then as well here, this actually just makes it a little easier for us so that if we say include attachments, when we access that information down here below, and you can see this for each loop points at the attachments property, this is actually coming back because include attachments is equal to true. All right, so moving down just to look at some of the other things, you can see here if the from is not containing anything specific, that's where then they have a little bit of logic to try and account for this. We'll just leave this as is, and let's just come into this for each loop. So because attachments is plural, and by that I mean we could have multiple attachments per one email, that is why we use an apply to each or a for each loop, really the same thing at the end of the day, so that we navigate through every single attachment, and at this level we're actually storing the individual attachments per attachment. Same thing is happening here on the right hand side. The final piece I'll call out is just around that delegated permission. If I come up to the trigger and I click this little ellipsis, the 3 dots, I can see here that my connections is pointed at this storm at Kumo Partners connection. And so that is what I was referring to earlier, is that this is only going to run off of my account and on my inbox. If I wanted to share this with somebody, in theory, I would need to offer them the ability to create their own copy of it, because otherwise we would have one flow trying to look only at one connection. when really we want two flows to look at two separate connections. But either way, we're just going to close this. Let's just go ahead and save. Oh, the folder path isn't set, and so this is just something very handy about Flow, is that if we don't set a parameter that's required, something of that sort, it'll usually warn us pretty well about that. So you can see down here, folder path is required. So for these templates, some of them are easy to go, hit the ground running, you don't have to change anything. Others you do have to configure a little bit. So in this case, since it does say to a specified OneDrive for Business folder, we do just need to say where it's coming from. Now, some of these features do have nice little UI functionality. So in this case, this can actually navigate through our entire, or in this case, my OneDrive for Business folder. So you can see root, I want to show contents, so it'll go down even further. And so you can just see that these are different folders that I have in my OneDrive for Business. I'm just going to pick a random folder here that is relevant for this. And where was it? Let's just put it, oh, custom folder, here we go. And so you can see this is how it uses just a relative path to that. I'm going to come over here and just make sure to do the same thing, otherwise Flow will yell at me again. So I'll go to that and then custom folder. All right, I'll go ahead and save. And now you can see that we didn't get any errors, so we are now good to go. So the next piece I want to focus on is this testability of an existing flow. So you can see here when I save it, I now have this test button that appears. I have two ways that I can test this. I can either manually test it, and this is off of the event actually happening. So you can see here it says I need a new email to hit my inbox in order to trigger this. Or if I had any prior runs, I could rerun this automatically off of an existing run. In this case, I'm just going to practice this with a manual run. I'm going to hit test. And now you can see that it's waiting for the email to happen. Alrighty, and there we go. So this is great because when we run a test flow like this and we're looking at the history, we can see step by step what has happened to that flow along the way. So we can see here that we did receive the email. This took 0 seconds to run. We can look at our condition. We can see that this came from a specific user. And when we come in, we can see that the file name is here. This is just the content, document bits, if you will. And since there's only one file, we just uploaded it that way. But if I open up my OneDrive folder, so come over here and refresh, we'll now see that the example file is stored. All right, so let's move on to the next template. So I'm going to come back to Flow. Let's go to templates again. All right, so the next flow we are going to work on is the Get Daily Reminder. And hit enter. And so this is the one, again, we want to make sure we're not using the Outlook.com. We are going to use the Get Daily Reminders in your Office 365 email account. So I'm going to go ahead and click this one. We can see again that the connections that it's using here is our Outlook through our main organizational account and then the Office 365 users. I'll go ahead and click continue. And so here now we can see that this trigger is a little bit different. This one is a scheduled, right? So now we can look at it is defaulting to once a day and there's no particular time. But we can configure a time. So the idea here is, let's say we want to schedule a daily reminder. I'll have it set for 9 a.m. This will get my profile. And so because this is running through that delegated permission, right? This action is actually called Get My Profile because it's running under the idea that this is my connection. So therefore, Get My Profile is going to always get the profile of whatever connection is applied to it. And so down here now we're sending an email. Again, it's kind of funny to think about because this does send from myself and it's going to send to me. It'll still work totally fine, but a little meta at the end of the day. And so here, all we're doing is really just creating a daily email to run, and we can have it say whatever we like. So you can see here the subject is just daily reminder for Microsoft Power Automate, and hi, display name, you have a reminder. In theory, we could make this say, remember to put in your timesheets for the day before. Maybe remember to stretch every day for 10 minutes, at least 4 different times per day. You can see where this can just be something easy going to, hey, I want to remind myself of these things on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. We could always change that just based here. We could say instead of once a day, once a week, and these will change then to, rather than per hour, it would change to, okay, run at these days of the month. All right, so nothing else too fancy I wanted to show here. Let's just go ahead and save. And when you save a scheduled flow, the first time it's always going to automatically run. I can show that by going to test flow automatically with a recent, and you can see that it already went through. I could manually test this again, and different from the automated flow, if I manually test this, it's going to actually run it automatically. So I could, but since it already runs, I'm just going to take advantage of that. All right, and now let me just pull up that email just so you guys can see what this looks like. And now you can see here the daily reminder from Microsoft. Hi Storm, you have a reminder, and you can see it has my quick notes there.